10 experts failed, but the poor immigrant cleaning lady solved it in 1 minute, and CEO fell for her. Before we continue with the story, tell us where you're watching from and how old you are, and subscribe to our channel to receive new stories every day that will touch your heart. I hope you enjoy the story. The air in the quantum dynamics boardroom was a suffocating blanket, thick with the scent of stale coffee, frustrated ambition, and the digital stench of millions bleeding away. 10 of New York's brightest financial and tech minds, each with impeccable Ivy League degrees and salaries that could buy small islands, stood hunched over a colossal monitor. On its gleaming surface, a complex high-frequency trading algorithm, designed to be their golden goose, was instead a ravenous beast, devouring capital with every tick. Dr. David Chen, head of R&D, ran a trembling hand through his thinning hair, his face a mask of escalating panic. Veins pulsed visibly at his temples, mirroring the frantic red numbers flashing on the screen. "This is unacceptable, absolutely inadmissible." David's voice was a guttural growl, laced with the metallic tang of desperation. He slammed a fist on the polished mahogany table, making the discarded coffee cups rattle. "Our Q3 launch is at stake. We're bleeding out, gentlemen." His gaze swept across the room, demanding answers from faces that offered only defeat. A nervous cough rippled through the gathered experts. Amidst the chaotic symphony of frantic keyboard clicks, hushed arguments about complex derivatives, and the low hum of stressed-out engineers, Alex Sterling remained an island of terrifying calm. The young, calculating CEO of Quantum Dynamics stood apart, leaning against a minimalist steel column, his posture as impeccably tailored as his bespoke suit. His piercing blue eyes, usually cold and analytical, now held an even more unsettling intensity as they scanned the lines of code scrolling endlessly on the central display. He was a vision of perfection, a man carved from logic and ambition, almost robotic in his precision. Emotion for Alex was a fatal flaw, a luxury his relentless pursuit of excellence could never afford. He was the apex predator in this concrete jungle, feared by his team, untouchable in his carefully constructed world. The clock on the wall crept past midnight, its soft ticking a mocking counterpoint to the company's plummeting profits. One by one, the exhausted engineers, their shoulders slumped in defeat, dragged their bodies out of the war room. Their footsteps echoed faintly, fading into the deep quiet of the late hour. The silence that settled after their departure was almost a palpable relief, a moment of respite before the next wave of panic. It was broken only by the steady, almost meditative hum of the distant servers and the rhythmic, familiar clatter of a cleaning bucket being nudged across the polished tile floor. Elena Petrova, an immigrant from a small Eastern European town, barely in her late 20s, pushed her cleaning cart with the quiet discretion of a shadow. Her worn uniform was simple, her movements efficient. To the brilliant minds of quantum dynamics, she was nothing. A ghost in the opulent hallways, glimpsed only during the graveyard shift, just the cleaning lady. But Eleanor was far more than she seemed. In her homeland, she had been a promising civil engineer, her mind alight with designs and structural integrity. The harsh realities of a new continent, the urgent need to support her aging grandmother, Maria, had forced her to abandon her blueprints for bleach and mops. Yet the engineer's eye for detail, her innate understanding of balance and flaw, remained. As she moved towards the enormous smartboard that dominated the room, its surface still plastered with dense diagrams, intricate flowcharts, and equations scrawled in various colors of dry erase marker, her curious eyes fixed on them. The lines, the arrows, the numbers. They spoke a language she understood, even if the context was different from the bridges and buildings of her past. She noticed a subtle asymmetry, a logical disconnect that screamed at her. Without conscious thought, driven by an almost involuntary impulse like someone instinctively straightening a crooked painting, she picked up a dry erase cleaner, and with a single, almost imperceptible flick of her wrist, she made a tiny, precise correction on a line of code, erasing a misplaced symbol, adding a barely visible dot. A detail so minuscule, so seemingly insignificant, that 10 of New York's brightest couldn't see it. It was a pattern revealed, a flaw corrected, a quiet genius in swift, invisible action. At the exact moment Elena was wiping away the last trace of the misplaced mark, her back to the door, the large glass panel slid open again with a soft hiss. It was Alex. He had shed his jacket, now slung casually over one shoulder, and his tie was dramatically loosened, a rare glimpse of disarray. He had returned, driven by an obsessive need for one more attempt to crack the baffling mystery. His eyes, sharp and restless, swept across the now empty room, then snagged on Elena. He watched, unnoticed, as she gave the final, almost ritualistic touches to the board. And then he saw it, the correction, a single, almost imperceptible line, a tiny, insignificant detail that, to his analytical mind, now shimmered like a distant guiding star in the vast chaos of the code. "What did you do?" Alex's voice, low and sharp, sliced through the profound silence, an accusation more than a question. Elena flinched, startled, the spray bottle of cleaner clattering from her trembling hand and rolling across the polished floor. The CEO, the man she only ever glimpsed from afar, an untouchable figure of power, was standing mere feet from her. His eyes, usually so devoid of overt emotion, now burned with an intensity that made her entire body tremble. Alex Sterling was a man forged in the crucible of certainty, his empire built not on whims, but on an unshakable foundation of cold data, unwavering logic, and the precise certainty of numbers. Impulses were for lesser men, yet as he stood over Elena Petrova, seeing the wide, startled eyes beneath the simple kerchief, there was something in her quiet composure, even in her sudden tremor, that captivated him more profoundly than the elegant correction on the algorithmic display. It was an anomaly, a variable he couldn't compute. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a grave, almost imperceptible whisper, a stark contrast to the boardroom's usual booming demands. "I saw what you did on the board. Explain." Elena swallowed hard, the sound a dry click in her throat. Her mind raced, conjuring scenarios of reprimand, perhaps even immediate dismissal. Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a drumbeat of fear. I was just cleaning, Mr. Sterling. It's my job. I noticed a symmetry error, something that my engineering professor used to say, that beauty lies in precision, even in codes." Her hands, rough from cleaning chemicals but surprisingly graceful, gestured timidly, trying to articulate a complex thought with simple words. Her voice, soft and lilting, carried a subtle accent he hadn't noticed before, a melody against the usual New York staccato. It was the first time he'd truly heard her speak. Alex's gaze was unwavering, his blue eyes dissecting her every twitch, every inflection. Symmetry, beauty, these weren't terms found in the cold, hard lexicon of Wall Street. This was the language of artists, perhaps even dreamers. Yet the undeniable truth was staring him in the face. The algorithm, moments ago a digital hemorrhage, was now running flawlessly. The red lines on the monitors had vanished, replaced by a confident, unwavering green. "Are you an engineer?" he asked, his voice still devoid of overt emotion, but laced with a subtle, almost imperceptible thread of genuine curiosity. Elena's shoulders slumped almost imperceptibly, a fleeting shadow of melancholy crossing her features. "In my country, yes, civil, but here I am. A cleaning lady," she replied, the last words heavy with a quiet resignation that spoke volumes about her journey. The next morning, a nervous energy pulsed through the glass and steel corridors of quantum dynamics. Whispers mingled with the clatter of keyboards. The algorithm, the bane of their existence, was working. The financial losses had miraculously halted overnight. In fact, the numbers were now steadily climbing into profitability. Dr. David Chen, though outwardly relieved, was a whirlwind of baffled confusion. He strode into Alex's expansive, minimalist office, data reports clutched in his hand. "It's inexplicable, Alex," David stated, his voice a mixture of awe and bewilderment. He gestured wildly at the screen displaying the corrected code. The system seemed to have self-corrected during the night. A fluke, perhaps, or a miracle? Alex didn't immediately answer. His gaze drifted past David, fixing on the boardroom door, then settling on the polished floor, where Eleanor's bucket had stood hours before. A flicker of something unreadable crossed his face. "It wasn't by itself," he murmured, more to himself than to David. He paused, a long, calculated silence that stretched the air thin. Then, with a decision that visibly shocked David, he added, his voice firm, "Chen, I want Miss Petrova to observe our R&D meetings for the next few days. She has a unique perspective." David's jaw nearly hit the floor. "The cleaning lady, Alex? With all due respect, sir, she has no formal training in quant finance, no security clearance for these discussions." The team, Alex interrupted, his voice like ice, was failing spectacularly. "Ms. Petrova offered a solution. That is all I need to know. Make it happen." The news ripped through quantum dynamics like a virus, mutating with each telling. The cleaning lady in the engineering meeting? The murmurs were incessant, swirling through cubicles and coffee stations, whispers of nepotism, of a CEO losing his mind. Sarah Jenkins, a pragmatic project manager known for her sharp tongue and even sharper skepticism, was the most vocal. She cornered David Chen by the water cooler, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "With all due respect, Dr. Chen," she hissed, her eyes narrowed, "this is an insult to our entire team. We're talking about millions of dollars, the future of this company, not cleaning stains off the carpet." Alex, however, remained impervious to the storm. His CEO mask was unshakable, a fortress of impenetrable calm. Elena, meanwhile, sat silently on the periphery of the vast boardroom, a quiet observer. She wore her crisp cleaning uniform, its blue fabric a stark contrast to the expensive suits around the table, and her familiar cleaning bucket was strategically placed near the door, a tangible reminder of her assigned role. She felt the weight of their skeptical glances, the hushed comments that drifted her way like invisible barbs. Her heart ached, but her resolve remained firm. She knew her place, but she also knew what she saw. She absorbed every complex graph, every scrolling line of code, every heated debate. Her mind, trained in the meticulous logic of engineering, began to see patterns, gaps, and elegant solutions that eluded the certified experts. Sometimes a tiny, involuntary escaped her lips. Other times, a subtle nod of her head, a silent affirmation as David Chen veered dangerously close to making the same logical error she had already foreseen. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, her seemingly simplistic observations and her surprisingly insightful questions began to nudge the team, guiding them in directions their complex, over-engineered thinking had never considered. One afternoon, the team faced a crippling impasse on a new module, its code resembling a Gordian knot. Hours had passed, and the frustration was again palpable. Elena, unable to bear the intellectual agony, finally broke her silence. Her voice, though soft, cut through the tension. "Perhaps the issue isn't in the input data itself," she ventured, her eyes fixed on the projected code, "but in how the system interprets the fluctuations. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, even if the color is the same." The room fell into a stunned silence. David Chen, after a moment of profound hesitation, His brow, furrowed in concentration, began to furiously type on his keyboard, testing her hypothesis. In a matter of seconds, the chaotic graphs on the main monitor snapped into perfect alignment. A confident, triumphant green light pulsed, signaling success. The team, before so skeptical, now stared at Elena with a mixture of shock, dawning comprehension, and undeniable admiration. Alex, from his position at the head of the table, fixed his gaze on her. It was a look that went beyond mere curiosity, beyond professional interest. It was something more profound, something he couldn't yet define. A stirring within the cold, calculating heart of the CEO. Elena's unique perspective had quickly become quantum dynamics' most coveted, if unspoken, asset. While the hushed murmurs about the cleaning lady who solves algorithms still occasionally rippled through the office, the quiet admiration of Dr. David Chen and Alex Sterling's unyielding, almost intimidating support effectively silenced most dissenting voices. Elena, however, harbored no illusions. She knew her position was precarious, an anomaly in the gleaming high-stakes world of finance. Her crisp blue cleaning uniform remained meticulously pressed, and her cart, gleaming with polished steel and neatly arrayed bottles, was always within sight, a constant, tangible reminder of her true role. She was an exception, she knew, one that could be revoked with a single, dismissive word. Yet despite the unspoken hierarchy, the dynamic between her and Alex shifted, subtly, imperceptibly, like the quiet turning of a complex gear. Meetings often stretched long into the evening, the relentless pursuit of financial perfection, knowing no clock. It became common for only the two of them to remain in the sprawling boardroom, the cold, stark brilliance of the monitors casting an otherworldly glow on their faces. The air, usually thick with the hum of servers and the low murmur of ambition, would grow still. On one particularly late night, just as the city lights outside began to truly glitter, a sudden, jarring blackout plunged the entire floor into an immediate, heavy darkness. The powerful hum of the building's central air conditioning unit died with a wheeze. For a heart-stopping second, the silence was absolute, a void. Then, with a soft click, the emergency lights flickered on, casting long, dancing shadows that stretched and distorted the sleek furniture, transforming the familiar boardroom into something alien and surreal. The only sound was the distant, reassuring rumble of the backup generators kicking into life somewhere deep within the building's foundations. Alex, who moments before had been hunched over a glowing diagram of market trends, now leaned back in his leather chair, a deep, tired sigh escaping his lips. His shoulders, usually rigid with the weight of leadership, seemed to visibly relax. It was the first time Elena had ever witnessed him unwind, even for a moment. He looked out at the sprawling tapestry of New York's dimmed skyline, now less a grid of ambition and more a distant, sparkling dream. "This is different," he murmured, his voice a low, almost intimate rumble in the newfound quiet. "Normally these pauses, they drive me insane. I feel like I'm wasting time, every second." Elena, who had instinctively lowered herself to the floor, leaning against the cool steel of her cleaning bucket, watched him. His words, delivered without his usual calculated precision, felt like a window into a carefully guarded interior. "Sometimes losing time is finding something new," she said softly, her voice carrying a comforting, almost melodic quality in the darkness. "That's what my grandmother Maria always says." He turned his head slowly, his gaze finding hers in the dim emergency light. "Your grandmother?" he repeated, a flicker of something he couldn't name in his eyes. "She sounds wise?" Alex hesitated then, a rare, almost startling pause in his usually seamless speech. He looked away, out into the vast, dark expanse of the city, his voice dropping to a near whisper, as if speaking to himself. I didn't have much of that growing up. My father, He was a financial genius. For him, every second not dedicated to profit was a wasted second. I grew up hearing that being the best was the only currency that mattered in the world. His words, unburdened by the usual CEO facade, revealed a hairline fracture in the polished armor he wore. Elena listened intently, absorbing his confession. Her own past, filled with the warmth of family and the harsh lessons of necessity, echoed his words in a different key. "And the pressure continues," she observed, her voice barely a whisper. "Even now that you are the best." Alex let out a short, humorless laugh, a dry, almost painful sound. "Especially now. Being at the top is solitary, Elena. You have to be relentless. There's no room for weakness." His voice trailed off, the word weakness hanging heavy in the air between them. "It's not weakness to ask for help or to feel things," she countered gently, her own experiences coloring her words. "It's being human. In my home, in my country, we learned that no matter how high you build, you need a strong foundation of people who care. And love. Love has no price, no algorithm." Just then, the distant generator roared to a higher pitch, and with a sudden thump, the main lights flickered back on, bathing the room in their cold, stark brilliance. The brief, intimate moment of shared vulnerability seemed to dissipate with the darkness, swallowed by the returning artificial light. Alex straightened, his CEO persona threatening to snap back into place. But something had fundamentally shifted. He looked at Elena, truly looked at her. And for the first time, there was no asceticism, no cold calculation in his eyes. Instead, there was a raw, genuine curiosity, a glimmer of something deeper, something profoundly human. He rose from his chair, and instead of returning to his diagrams, he walked towards her, drawn by an invisible current. His gaze dropped from her eyes to her lips, and an unexpected warmth, a sudden, undeniable heat, filled the space between them. Alex leaned in, slowly, deliberately, and Elena, her breath catching in her throat, did not pull away. Their lips met in a hesitant, almost fragile kiss, a soft brush that promised so much more. It was a silent, profound acknowledgement of a connection that defied every algorithm, every calculation, every expectation. The kiss in the boardroom, brief and unexpected, had changed everything and nothing all at once. Alex, the CEO of ICE, remained Alexander Sterling, the imposing, unapproachable leader of quantum dynamics. Elena, the engineer disguised as a cleaning lady, maintained her impeccable uniform and her respectful silence. Yet, an invisible electric current now hummed between them, a mutual recognition that transcended words and formal titles. It was a silent conversation played out in stolen glances and lingering presences. Alex found himself spending more and more time in the R&D lab, not just supervising, but lingering, often finding excuses to be near Elena's quiet, methodical movements. He'd observe her from across the room, catching her eyes in a fleeting moment. Sometimes he'd find her watching him, a thoughtful, almost curious expression on her face, and a barely perceptible smile would soften his lips. A genuine, unforced curve that his sharp-suited executive team had never once witnessed. Elena's unique perspective continued to be quantum dynamics' lifeline, a new, even more ambitious project poised to redefine a significant sector of the market, stumbled upon a critical algorithmic flaw. 10 seasoned engineers, including the initially skeptical Dr. Chen, debated for days, their faces etched with the familiar lines of frustration. Whiteboards became illegible battlegrounds of complex equations, and the air buzzed with increasingly desperate theories. Elena, observing from her usual quiet corner, saw the solution with disarming simplicity. She approached the main display, her finger tracing a pattern invisible to the experts. "Perhaps," she'd suggested, her voice barely a whisper, The problem isn't with the data itself, but how the system tries to build upon a faulty premise. It's like trying to build a skyscraper on a foundation that's off by a millimeter. The whole structure will eventually crumble. Dr. Chen, now a firm believer in her uncanny knack, immediately implemented her suggested adjustment. The solution was blindingly fast, astonishingly efficient, and once again, an undisputed, resounding success. The project was back on track, its future secured. But success has its own spotlight. The whispers about the hidden genius at quantum dynamics began to leak, first as an excited hum within the industry's closed circles, then escalating into a tantalizing rumor in obscure tech blogs. Finally, it exploded like a bombshell across the front page of the Wall Street Gazette. Maid with no degree saves, Wall Street giant, genius or fraud. The headline screamed in bold black letters, accompanied by a candid, slightly grainy photo of Elena. She was captured mid-smile, a hesitant, almost shy expression on her face, her blue cleaning uniform a stark contrast to the complex algorithmic diagrams blurring in the background. The article, quoting anonymous sources within quantum dynamics, sensationalized the narrative of a cleaning lady who consistently solved problems that a team of Ivy League-educated doctors and PhDs could not. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Social media ignited, a wildfire of conflicting opinions. Comments ranged from incredulous outrage, "Is this what happens when you hire for diversity and not competence?" to bewildered admiration, proof that talent is truly everywhere, just waiting to be seen. But the prevailing tone, cutting through the noise, was undeniably one of prejudice. Alex's carefully cultivated reputation was suddenly under fire. The very legitimacy of quantum dynamics, a company built on elite intellect, was being questioned. Emergency meetings were called with the stern old money members of the board, who demanded explanations about how an unqualified individual was being entrusted with projects involving millions, if not billions, of dollars. Elena saw the devastating headline for the first time in the company cafeteria. It was flashing on a large TV screen, part of a news segment dissecting the scandal. A cold dread seized her, the clatter of trays and chatter of voices fading into a distant hum. She felt the floor literally sway beneath her feet. Slowly, inevitably, the gazes of her colleagues, engineers she'd worked alongside, turned towards her. Some held genuine curiosity, others a flicker of sympathy, but many were etched with clear, undeniable judgment. Their eyes, once filled with professional respect, now seemed to dissect her, measuring her against their ingrained prejudices. With a deep, shaky breath, Elena rose from her table. Her dignity, though bruised, remained unbold. She walked directly to Alex's office, the hushed whispers of the cafeteria trailing in her wake. The door was ajar. Alex was on the phone, his voice firm, projecting authority, but his eyes, when they met hers, betrayed a deep, raw frustration she had never witnessed before. A raw, almost human emotion that cracked his polished facade. He quickly ended the call, his thumb pressing down hard on the end button. "Elena, I am so sorry about this," he began, his voice losing its corporate edge, softening with genuine concern. "I'm dealing with it. No, Alex," she interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper, yet infused with a silent, profound pain that startled him. Her throat ached, but her resolve was clear. "You don't need to apologize. I understand. I am just the cleaning lady." A bitter irony laced her words. This publicity is bad for you, for the company." With a deliberate, almost ritualistic movement, she unclipped her quantum dynamics ID badge from her uniform and placed it carefully on Alex's pristine glass desk. The badge, once a symbol of her hidden potential, now felt like a brand of shame. "I won't be a problem for you. I don't belong here. Not like this." Alex stretched out a hand instinctively to stop her, his fingers hovering in the air. "Elena, wait!" But she was already turning, her gaze fixed straight ahead, her back ramrod straight. She walked out of his office, leaving him standing there, alone, swallowed by the silence. He was left to contend not only with the crushing weight of his choices, but also with the dawning, painful realization that in his attempts to protect her from scrutiny, he had, in fact, pushed her further away. The cold, logical calculation had failed him, and left him utterly, devastatingly alone. The polished halls of quantum dynamics, once a vibrant beacon of innovation under Alex's relentless command, now felt like a mausoleum. A hushed pall had fallen over the trading floors, the research labs, even the executive suites. Eleanor's absence was a palpable void, a chilling silence that reverberated not only in the high-tech R&D room, but throughout the very fabric of the company. Dr. David Chen and Sarah Jenkins, who had both witnessed and championed Elena's quiet brilliance, frantically tried to fill the sudden, gaping chasm she'd left. They pushed their teams harder, analyzed data more intensely, but the unique spark she brought, the intuitive leaps that cut through months of complex analysis, had simply vanished. It was like trying to reignite a fire with damp kindling. Alex, the undisputed architect of this empire, was now colder, more distant than ever before. His impeccably tailored suits, once symbols of his formidable control, now seemed like an empty armor. The sharp, calculating brilliance in his eyes had been subtly replaced by a profound, almost imperceptible melancholy, a shadow that clung to him like a second skin. The company's numbers, once a source of relentless ascent, stagnated. Creativity, once the lifeblood of quantum dynamics, had inexplicably withered. The very air felt heavier without her. In the cavernous silence of his luxurious Manhattan penthouse, Alex found himself adrift. The sprawling city lights outside his floor-to-ceiling windows, usually a source of restless energy, now seemed to mock his inner turmoil. That unexpected kiss in the boardroom, the raw vulnerability they'd shared, the effortless elegance of Elena's solutions that cut through his most intricate problems. It all haunted him. He picked up his phone, his fingers hovering over her contact. He called repeatedly, dozens of times a day, but each call was met with the same cold, impersonal voicemail. "Elena, please call me," he'd plead into the void, his voice, for the first time in perhaps his entire adult life, laced with a raw, desperate yearning. I need to talk. That's not what I wanted, it's not." Each attempt felt like a futile whisper against a raging storm. He longed for her simple presence, for the quiet calm she brought to his chaotic world. Miles away, in her modest but impeccably kept apartment, Elena moved through her days in a fog. Her usually bright eyes held a distant, almost vacant look. She spent hours tending to her small collection of houseplants, their vibrant green a stark contrast to her inner turmoil. She would reread her old engineering textbooks, the familiar Russian characters a comforting balm, but her mind rarely absorbed the words. Maria Petrova, her grandmother, watched her with a heavy heart. Maria's wisdom, etched in the gentle lines around her eyes, knew the subtle language of pain. Then, one evening, there was a tentative knock on their door. Eleanor froze. Maria opened it to find Alex Sterling, a man whose expensive suit looked out of place in their humble hallway, his usually unblemished face now marked by dark circles under his eyes, betraying nights of sleepless anguish. He looked less like a fearsome CEO and more like a lost boy. Maria studied him, her gaze a blend of curiosity and ancient knowing. "She doesn't want to see anyone, young man," Maria said, her voice gentle yet firm, with the soft lilt of her own accent. Her eyes, however, were surprisingly compassionate. "My grandmother's heart sees her pain, and I think it sees yours too. Why did you come?" Alex stood awkwardly on the worn threshold, the vibrant patterns of the hallway runner a stark contrast to his monochromatic designer shoes. He finally lowered his head, a gesture of submission Elena never would have believed possible. "I made a mess, Mrs. Petrova," he confessed, his voice rough, thick with regret. "I hurt her. I didn't defend her when I should have. I was a coward." The word tasted bitter on his tongue. He despised weakness, especially his own. Maria sighed, a soft, almost weary sound. Her gaze, filled with ancient compassion, softened further. "A big man like you," she mused, her voice a low murmur. "A man of numbers, of empires. But the heart, son, the heart has its own accounts. And sometimes to fix them, it's not enough to ask for forgiveness. You have to show that the change is real. You have to go after it, not wait for it to come to you." Maria's words hit Alex like a physical blow. They resonated deeply, echoing the very wisdom Eleanor often spoke of. He thanked her, a new resolve hardening his jaw, and left, the weight of her words settling into his soul. That night, Alex didn't pore over financial reports. Instead, he hunched over his sleek laptop, the bright screen illuminating his tormented face. He drafted dozens of emails, typing furiously, then deleting each one with a frustrated sigh. They were too formal, too corporate, too cold, until finally he found the right words, simple, direct, unflinchingly vulnerable. The subject line was simply, "Elena." "Elena," the email began, cutting straight to the raw nerve of his regret. "I know I don't deserve your attention right now, but what happened between us, it meant everything to me. The way I reacted, the way I failed to defend you, was cowardly and utterly unjust. I regret it more than you can imagine. Quantum Dynamics has a crucial presentation at the Global Tech Summit next week. It's the project you helped save. I truly wish you would be there. Even if you don't want to speak to me, please, just come. You deserve to see the public recognition for the work we built together. Alex." Elena's reply arrived the next day. It was short, cold, and sharp as a blade. 2 words that cut him to the quick. "I will not." Alex felt a knot tighten in his throat, a suffocating weight in his chest. Those 2 words carried the entire crushing burden of her disappointment, her pain, her absolute refusal to give him another chance. The Global Tech Summit was the pinnacle event of the financial tech year, his chance to reassert quantum dynamics dominance. But without Elena, without the quiet fire she'd ignited within him, the prospect of triumph felt utterly hollow. He felt a profound, aching sense of loss, a realization that something essential was missing, and it wasn't just another algorithm. It was the heart of his operation and the core of his very being. Elena's refusal was a direct challenge to his calculated world, forcing him to confront a truth he'd always avoided. Some battles couldn't be won with logic alone. He was on the brink of losing everything that truly mattered, and the next week would prove whether he had the courage to fight for it, not with his mind, but with his awakened heart. The grand ballroom of the Javits Center pulsed with a frantic, almost electric energy. It was the Global Tech Summit in New York, the undisputed zenith of the financial technology calendar. Thousands of global investors, the formidable titans of industry, and a ravenous specialized media thronged the polished floors. The air hummed with anticipation, the scent of expensive cologne mingling with the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee. This was meant to be Alex Sterling's day of undisputed triumph, the crowning moment where quantum dynamics, with its miraculously salvaged algorithm, would finally cement its place atop the financial tech hierarchy. Yet, amidst the dazzling lights and expectant faces, Alex was strangely distant, his gaze unfocused, his mind miles away from the roaring spotlights. Backstage, nestled amongst a dizzying maze of cables, projection screens, and bustling technicians, Alex ran through his meticulously crafted slides for what felt like the 10th time. His fingers, usually so precise, tapped a nervous rhythm on the remote. Dr. David Chen, ever vigilant, approached him cautiously, a frown creasing his brow. "Everything all right, Chief?" David asked, noticing the unusual tension in his CEO's rigid shoulders, the faint tremor in his hand. Alex, usually a fortress of calm before a major presentation, seemed almost brittle. "Everything's in place, Chen," Alex replied, his voice flat, almost robotic, devoid of his usual passionate intensity when discussing quantum dynamics' groundbreaking work. The words felt hollow, a practiced recitation. The truth, a cold, undeniable weight in his chest, was that despite the technical perfection, despite the flawless slides and the meticulously rehearsed lines, something crucial was missing. Someone was missing. The absence of Elena was a silent scream in the vibrant chaos around him. Miles away, in her modest but comforting apartment, bathed in the soft afternoon light filtering through the window, Elena Petrova sat curled on the worn armchair, her grandmother, Maria, beside her, their hands intertwined. A small, crackling television played the live stream of the summit. The booming voice of the presenter echoed in the small living room. "And now, it is with immense pleasure that we invite to the stage the visionary mind behind quantum dynamics, Alexander Sterling." Maria squeezed Eleanor's hand gently. "Are you sure you don't want to go, Mia Tsvetuchek, my little flower?" Maria's voice was soft, laced with a lifetime of wisdom. "It's your work too. Your intelligence is there, in those numbers. You helped him." Eleanor sighed, a heavy, weary sound that carried the weight of her recent humiliation. Her gaze was fixed on Alex's image on the screen, a figure of daunting power. "I know, babushka," she murmured, using the familiar, comforting term for grandmother. "But I don't know if I fit in that world anymore, not after everything. The headlines, the whispers. It just felt like I was a problem." She remembered the pitying glances, the sharp judgment in the eyes of the other employees, the way Alex had seemed to withdraw, protecting his company's image rather than her dignity. The pain of that memory was still fresh, a raw wound. At that very instant, Elena's worn cell phone vibrated on the small wooden table beside her. It was an international call. Her eyes, clouded with doubt and fatigue, widened in sudden disbelief as she heard the crisp, formal voice on the other end. "Ms. Petrova, this is the University of Zurich. We are delighted to inform you that your application for the full scholarship master's program in civil engineering has been approved. The scholarship covers everything: tuition, living expenses, all costs. It is a truly unique opportunity, and the program begins in just 5 weeks. Eleanor slowly lowered the phone, her hand trembling. The world around her seemed to spin, colors blurring, sounds fading. Her dream, the very reason she had left her home, endured hardship, cleaned offices late into the night, was finally, miraculously, becoming a tangible reality. It hung in the air, shimmering like a mirage she could finally touch. But as her gaze drifted back to the small television screen, Alex was already on stage, bathed in the harsh glow of the spotlights. His posture was impeccable, his expression composed, but something about him seemed empty. The usual spark, the electric current of his ambition, was absent. "Today, I present to you a project that redefines algorithmic precision," Alex began, his voice resonating through the vast auditorium, a perfectly modulated baritone. But then he faltered. He stopped. His eyes, usually so focused, now swept frantically across the sea of faces in the audience, as if searching for something or someone. The intricate technical words, the very language he had mastered, seemed to catch in his throat, suffocating him. A low, uneasy murmur began to spread through the crowd. Alex, the infallible CEO, the unshakable titan of finance, was visibly frozen. A bead of sweat trickled down his temple. "He's nervous," Elena whispered to her grandmother, a sharp pang of concern lancing through her chest. It was an emotion she hadn't expected to feel for him. Alex cleared his throat, tried again, his lips moving, but no coherent sound emerged. The collective murmuring in the audience grew louder, a wave of discomfort. Some attendees were already discreetly pulling out their phones, scrolling, tweeting, their faces reflecting a mixture of confusion and disappointment. Maria, with her ancient, unwavering wisdom, gently took Eleanor's trembling hand. Her gaze, warm and knowing, fixed on her granddaughter. "Moja ljubi Maya," she said, her voice soft but resolute. "My beloved, happiness is more than a diploma, more than a dream. Sometimes it is being exactly where you are meant to be, with exactly who you are meant to be with. Go. Your eyes tell me that man, your proud and stubborn algorithm man, he needs you, not for the numbers, not for the data, but for his heart." Elena's gaze flickered from the TV to her grandmother and back to the struggling figure of Alex on stage. The scholarship to Zurich, the fulfillment of a lifelong ambition, or the man who, despite his flaws, had awakened something profoundly new and powerful within her. The choice, laid bare, was agonizing. But then, an instinct, raw and undeniable, surged through her. Without another moment of hesitation, she pushed herself up from the armchair, a newfound determination blazing in her eyes. "I need to go, babushka. Go, my flower. Go save your proud and stubborn algorithm." Maria beamed, her face radiating a quiet joy as she gently, firmly pushed Elena towards the door, knowing that some battles are won not with logic, but with love. Elena ran as she had never run before, her worn sneakers pounding on the sidewalk. She flagged down the first yellow cab she saw, shouting the address of the Javits Center. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a drumbeat of anticipation and fear. When she finally burst through the convention center doors, the scene was thick with tension. Alex was still on stage, visibly pale, his hands gripping the podium so tightly his knuckles were white. He was struggling, unable to utter a single coherent sentence. The vast auditorium was steeped in a suffocating, awkward silence. She slipped through a side service door, emerging into the bustling backstage area. In the dim light, she could see the worried faces of David Chen and Sarah Jenkins, their eyes glued to the stage. Ignoring their startled looks, Eleanor moved with a newfound purpose, gliding towards the edge of the stage. A ripple went through the first rows of the audience, hushed whispers of, "Who is that woman? In jeans?" But Eleanor paid them no mind. Alex, desperate, hopeless, lifted his eyes, searching. And then his gaze locked onto hers. In that precise instant, everything shifted. The agonizing tension in his face melted away, replaced by a sudden, brilliant flash of hope. And then he smiled. It was a genuine, unrestrained smile, so full of warmth and relief that no one at Quantum Dynamics, no investor, no colleague, had ever witnessed it before. It was a smile meant only for her. The vast auditorium of the Global Tech Summit was plunged into a breathless, almost sacred silence. Every eye in the cavernous hall was fixed on the stage. Moments before, Alex Sterling had been visibly shattered, a man teetering on the precipice of public failure. But now, as his gaze met Elena Petrova's, an emotion so profound and raw bloomed in his eyes, an emotion that had been meticulously absent for far too long. The entire world of financial technology, watching via live stream, held its collective breath. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of courage and apprehension, yet her steps were firm as she ascended the few carpeted steps to the stage. The spotlights, once glaring, now felt like a warm embrace. She moved with an innate grace, a natural magnetism that drew all eyes. As she reached Alex, her presence seemed to instantly diffuse the crushing tension that still clung to him. She leaned in, her voice a soft, conspiratorial whisper, a small, mischievous smile playing on her lips. "Remember when you said I explained things as if I were teaching someone to bake a cake?" A flicker of surprise, then genuine amusement, softened Alex's rigid features. A low, rich chuckle escaped his lips, a sound so utterly foreign, so filled with unburdened joy, that it was startling. It was the first truly authentic laugh anyone at Quantum Dynamics had heard from him in weeks, perhaps months. The carefully constructed armor of the CEO, piece by piece, seemed to crumble around him. "I remember," he whispered back, his voice thick with a mixture of relief and dawning wonder. "Every word." Eleanor turned to face the expectant crowd, a sea of bewildered but intrigued faces. She gently took the microphone from Alex's hand, its cool metal a comforting weight. Her soft Eastern European accent, usually carefully subdued, now lent a melodic quality to her clear, confident voice. "My apologies for the interruption, ladies and gentlemen," she began, her gaze sweeping across the vast audience. "Sometimes the most complex problem simply needs the simplest perspective." A ripple of intrigued murmurs spread through the crowd. She then handed the microphone back to Alex, her fingers brushing his, sending a jolt of warmth through them both. Her eyes, shining with unwavering belief, held his. "Go on," she urged softly. "Teach them as if you're explaining it to your grandmother. From the heart." Alex took a deep, shuddering breath, filling his lungs with a new kind of courage. He looked at Elena, who had discreetly positioned herself a step behind him, a silent pillar of unwavering support. In that moment, the calculating CEO vanished. The coldness that had defined him melted away, replaced by an authentic warmth that radiated from his very core. "Good afternoon, everyone," he began, his voice no longer robotic, but rich, resonant, and brimming with a newfound conviction that captivated every ear. "Today, I was scheduled to present to you the most advanced trading algorithm our company has ever developed. But I've come to realize that technology, no matter how brilliant, only truly matters if we can connect it to the human experience." He didn't resort to complex financial jargon or arcane technical terms. Instead, Alex began to paint a vivid picture with his words, analogies flowing effortlessly from his lips. He compared the intricate algorithm to a grand orchestra where each instrument, each data point, must play in perfect synchronized harmony to create a masterpiece. He explained the concept of optimization not through equations, but as the delicate art of a master chef who knows precisely when a single ingredient needs a subtle adjustment to perfect the entire dish. The audience, initially restless and skeptical, leaned forward, captivated by the sheer clarity and raw authenticity of his presentation. Genuine laughter rippled through the hall as he wove in humorous, relatable comparisons, humanizing the cold world of algorithms. Elena, standing steadfastly by his side, watched him, tears welling in her eyes. She saw not the inaccessible CEO, but the vulnerable, passionate man who had kissed her under the emergency lights. She saw her Alex. When Alex finished, the auditorium erupted. The applause was thunderous, an almost deafening roar that rolled through the hall like a wave. It escalated into a full, standing ovation that lasted for nearly 2 minutes, echoing the unprecedented success of his transformed presentation. People were cheering, whistling, their faces alight with excitement. Alex, overwhelmed and humbled, scanned the sea of faces, his eyes searching for just one. He found Eleanor, her own eyes glistening with pride and silent tears. Amidst the swirling vortex of congratulatory shouts and eager handshakes from industry giants who suddenly wanted a piece of his new vision, Alex's world narrowed to just her. He cut through the crowd, pulling her gently aside into a quieter corner backstage. away from the flashing cameras and insistent questions. His voice was hoarse with emotion, thick with the weight of everything left unsaid. "You came," he whispered, his eyes locked on hers, disbelief and profound gratitude warring within him. "I couldn't let you struggle up there alone, Mr. Sterling," she replied, a gentle smile gracing her lips, a reflection of her own overwhelming emotions. "Elena," he said, his voice dropping, almost pleading. He took her hands in his touch warm and firm. "I need to tell you something. You are the only person who has ever made me want to be more human. I spent my entire life building walls, meticulously constructing this facade of being just the CEO, invulnerable, emotionless. And then you." His voice cracked with raw feeling. "You in your cleaning uniform, with your simple logic and your enormous heart. You made me question absolutely everything. That kiss, Elena." I panicked. Not because it meant nothing, but because it meant everything. And I didn't know how to handle it. "It was the worst decision of my life to pretend it didn't happen." He squeezed her hands, his gaze searching hers, vulnerable and exposed. Elena listened, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Tears, warm and plentiful, traced paths down her cheeks. "And now?" she whispered, the single word hanging delicately in the air between them. Alex took another deep, shaky breath, visibly steeling himself. He was about to take the biggest leap of his life, a jump far more terrifying than any market speculation. Then, right there, amidst the residual hum of the crowd and the distant chatter of the press, he got down on one knee. He reached into the inner pocket of his bespoke suit jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. His hands, usually so steady, trembled slightly as he opened it, revealing a single, exquisite diamond, sparkling under the harsh backstage lights. "Elena Petrova," he began, his voice resonating with a newfound, unwavering clarity. "I know you have your dreams, your scholarship to Zurich. I know our story is, well, it's completely insane. But I've realized that professional success means absolutely nothing if I don't have you to share it with. I've realized that the most important board meetings are far less important than a single smile from you. And I've realized that I love you. I love you for your brilliant mind, for your incredible courage, for your beautiful way of seeing the world. I love you for making me a better man. Elena, will you marry me?" He looked into her tear-filled eyes, his own shining with raw emotion. "And before you answer," he added, a hint of his old strategic self returning, but now infused with tenderness, "I've already been in contact with the university in Zurich. They have an executive master's program with flexible distance learning options. You don't have to choose between your dreams and us. You can have both. You can have everything." The silence in the bustling backstage area became almost deafening as Eleanor processed his words, his grand, audacious gesture. She looked at the powerful man kneeling before her, the CEO who had once seen her only as the cleaning lady, now offering her not just his heart, but a future where all her dreams could coexist. More tears flowed, but these were tears of overwhelming joy and disbelief. She stretched out her hand, her fingers trembling as she touched his cheek. "Alexander Sterling," she choked out, a joyous laugh bubbling through her tears. "You are utterly, completely, beautifully mad. And yes, I accept." A burst of spontaneous applause and cheers erupted from the handful of startled onlookers who had witnessed the intimate, powerful proposal. Alex, a wide, genuine grin splitting his face, carefully slid the sparkling ring onto her finger. Then he pulled her into a passionate, breathless kiss, a kiss that sealed not only a profound commitment, but marked the end of an era of profound loneliness for them both. It was a kiss that promised a future built not just on numbers and algorithms, but on the boundless, unpredictable, and infinitely powerful algorithm of the heart. Months later, life for Elena and Alex had settled into a harmonious symphony of shared purpose. The vibrant green of spring had given way to the soft warmth of a New York summer. They exchanged vows in an intimate, deeply emotional ceremony held within the whispering tranquility of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. Sunlight dappled through the lush canopy of trees, painting shifting patterns on their faces as they stood beneath an arch woven with jasmine and ivy. Maria, Elena's beloved grandmother, her eyes brimming with happy tears, stood proudly beside them, her traditional embroidered scarf a splash of vibrant color against her simple dress. Alex's parents, the formidable Sterling Sr. and his elegant wife, were also there, a surprising but welcome presence. They watched their son with a newfound softness in their eyes, clearly touched by the profound transformation he had undergone, a testament to Eleanor's quiet influence. The small gathering felt less like a formal event and more like a merging of two worlds, two souls. Elena, now radiant and confident, seamlessly balanced her demanding online master's studies in civil engineering with her groundbreaking new role at quantum dynamics. She was no longer a silent observer on the periphery. Instead, she commanded respect as the newly appointed Director of Social Innovation, a position Alex had personally crafted for her, a bold move that had initially raised eyebrows on the board but quickly proved its worth. Under her empathetic and visionary leadership, the company launched Quantum Steps, a revolutionary program. It offered fully funded scholarships and intensive mentorship to brilliant young minds from disadvantaged communities, many of them immigrants like Elena, who possessed undeniable intelligence but lacked the crucial access and opportunities that had once been denied to her. The program was a beacon of hope, a tangible manifestation of Elena's belief that true talent knows no postcode or passport. Alex, for his part, remained at the helm of quantum dynamics, but his leadership had undergone a profound renewal. The cold, calculating CEO had softened, transformed from within. His smile, once a rare, tight curve, was now frequent and genuine, crinkling the corners of his eyes. His gaze, once sharp and analytical, held a new, profound empathy. Together, he and Elena were an unstoppable force, a perfect synergy where Alex's incisive market vision blended seamlessly with Elena's compassionate, human-centered genius. Their presence together in the boardroom was a powerful statement. Board meetings, once dominated solely by profit margins and market shares, now regularly included passionate discussions about social impact, ethical tech development, and community outreach. The company was thriving, not just financially, but in its soul. 3 years later, the air in the university auditorium was buzzing with a different kind of excitement, the joyous anticipation of a graduation ceremony. It was the inaugural graduating class of the Quantum Steps program, a testament to their shared vision. Alex and Elena, sitting side by side in the front row, watched, their hearts swelling with pride, as a procession of bright young faces, many from humble beginnings, walked across the stage to receive their certificates. These were the future coders, the aspiring tech leaders, the dreamers Elena had championed. They presented their capstone coding projects with an enthusiasm that was infectious. Elena, her eyes sparkling, explained the most complex algorithmic concepts to the beaming, sometimes bewildered parents in the audience. She used her signature analogies of gardening and cooking, making abstract lines of code feel as relatable as a family recipe. As the ceremony concluded, a hush fell, broken only by the proud murmurs of families. Elena leaned her head against Alex's shoulder, a profound sense of peace settling over her. "You know, Alex," she mused, her voice soft, contemplative. "When I cleaned that whiteboard, I just wanted to fix a flaw. I never imagined it would fix our lives." She felt the warmth of his arm tighten around her, pulling her closer. Alex looked from the graduates on the stage to Elena, his gaze filled with an overwhelming tenderness. "And I, Elena," he responded, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought my trading algorithm was the most complex thing I had ever created. But ours, our algorithm of the heart, that, my love, is truly the greatest work of art." His thumb gently traced the curve of her jaw, his eyes reflecting a deep, abiding adoration. They looked at each other then, truly seeing. The love that shone in their eyes was a luminous reflection of an improbable, almost impossible journey, yet one that was profoundly, unequivocally true. From an unassuming immigrant cleaning lady and a once cold CEO, they had built not just a more human technology empire, but a life rich with purpose, overflowing with love. Their story was undeniable proof that brilliance and boundless heart can be found in the most unexpected places, that true value lies beyond the confines of a resume. The deepest cleaning they had learned wasn't of offices, but of the soul itself. We want to hear your opinion about this beautiful love story. Let us know what you thought of this plot full of emotions and surprises. Tell us your name, where you are watching from, and what score you would give this story from 0 to 10, a story that touched hearts. And if you enjoyed the storyline, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the amazing new stories coming up. See you next time!